Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the former president. We got to watch him closely because he's very likely to be our next president. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he's been having some rallies down in Georgia. Now, what we've been trying to track here is what is the power of Donald Trump in these GOP primaries? There was a narrative that it was ironclad, unshakable, but that's beginning to really start to at least fizzle in the current age with some of his primary people that he endorsed losing in the polls, possibly going to be losing in the primary, and the specter of kind of his performance there, not really as powerful as it once was. All eyes are on this primary where Trump promised that he was going to come to that state and campaign as hard as he could against Brian Kemp for governor of Georgia and endorsing David Perdue, who lost his Senate bid there, who has gone full-blown stop the steal. Let's put this up there on the screen. Trump visited Georgia for a rally there for David Perdue, who has not been doing so well in the polls. He attacked Governor Kemp, saying he's waging a war on, quote, rhino sellouts. Here's what he said, quote, Brian Kemp is a turncoat, a coward, a complete and total disaster. Before we can defeat the Democrats, socialists, and communists, we first have to defeat the rhino sellouts and the losers in the primary this spring, referring to Kemp as the Republican in name only. Defining, obviously, Republican as whether you believe in stop the steal or not.
He also said,
I always find hilarious.
I liked this.
Yes.
If Brian Kemp is renominated, he will go down in flames at the ballot box because Stacey will steal it from him and humiliate him. So
yeah,
he's not
maybe
just
like she will of the Star Trek series.
So he's not just like this one in the past was stolen, but he's going ahead and predicting a future steal as well here.
Oh, well, it's a very smart political strategy in a state where we already lost twice, or three times actually, between the Senate race and the own presidential. But what's happening actually with the poll? Let's put this up there. This is just from 3 weeks ago. Governor Kemp is showing a big lead over David Perdue in that primary race for governor. The poll had Kemp at 50% and Perdue with 39%, despite receiving the endorsement of Donald Trump, and the remaining 10% they were unsure or would vote for somebody else. Now, why does that matter? Because if Kemp prevails in this, he was the single biggest adversary within the GOP towards Stop the Steal at the time because he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. I mean, he basically, as governor, had to certify the election results in Georgia. He had no choice but to do so. And then what ended up happening is that Trump and everybody, concocted this cockamamie idea that he could have somehow, swung the election in the state of Georgia. And despite, all the inquiry and looking into this, it doesn't matter to many of these people. They consider it that he betrayed the president. Now, we thought that given the Republican base and, in terms of their affinity for Trump and more, that they were willing to swing completely on his word. But that just doesn't seem to be how it is, both in Georgia and in Alabama, where Mo Brooks, who he previously endorsed and not been doing so well, also because he departed there from Stop the Steal. And another important thing to note here is how big exactly was the crowd in Georgia, something that Trump loves to obsess over. Let's put this up there. Well, as this is from the GBP, the Georgia Public Broadcasting, Trump's Republican revenge tour falters in Georgia. And what they specifically point to is how the crowd that gathered at this rally had a huge percentage of out-of-state people. But even worse for him, Krystal, is that the crowd size was about 1/4 to 1/5 of what he drew whenever he was running for president. Now, his spokesperson said that's fake news. Let's put this up there on the screen.
Good old
Very
Liz.
Trumpian fashion. They said, oh, it's ridiculous. It's fake news. There was a massive crowd between 25 and 35,000. Let's put this next one up there on the screen, though. If you compare it to the previous rally, there were not 25 to 35,000 people. The crowd was far smaller and far quieter than the other rallies in Georgia, and the actual attendance is somewhere between 5,000 people. So, it's a classic Trump move in order to say that this was, it's ridiculous. He didn't draw a crowd. We shouldn't erase it and say that, it's not like thousands of people didn't come. But compared to the crowds that he was drawing in 2020, they were 5 times larger than what he was drawing there last night. It shows you that he appeals to the most diehard people who all they care about is Stop the Steal.
Yeah.
But Trump's ability in order to connect with the broader American electorate was always this. People are willing to overlook some of the most annoying, boorish stuff that the guy does, but they're like, I hate the left, especially the cultural left. And the guy seems to know what he's talking about when it comes to the economy, which, we can dispute that, but that's how people feel whenever it comes to the conditions of their lives and why they ended up voting for him. when all you care about now is election conspiracy, then you're only going to be able to draw out and really appeal to the people who most care about that.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean he still wouldn't be able to win the election because he couldn't do that again. But in terms of how he's conducting himself with the Republican base, he's showing us and giving us a true test of how many of them are there for him specifically on no matter what he talks about. It's not nearly as large of a number as, frankly, I would have even predicted.
It's really interesting because in that poll that we put up there that has Kemp leading Perdue by a margin of 50 to 39, they dig into who still has a favorable view of Trump within the Republican base. The numbers are still pretty strong, though I would say probably not as strong as they used to be. You've got still nearly 80% of Republican primary voters who have a favorable view of Trump. Among those that still favor the president, 52% support Perdue, while 39% support Kemp. So even among the people that are in that 80% saying, look, I still like Trump, he's still my guy, they're not going along with who he's telling them to back in the primary, not overwhelmingly anyway. And then on the other end, the people who are done with Trump, who are still Republicans, but are in that 20% who have an unfavorable view of him, there you have an overwhelming support for Kemp, 70% to 15%. So even though you still have pretty high favorability numbers, though again, I would say not as high as they used to be, you don't have that same sway that he once used to exercise of people basically saying, hey, if he says that Perdue is my guy, then I'm going to back up Perdue. And I think that does come directly from you're obsessing over an issue that is not top of mind for people.
Yeah,
I mean, we just went over the polling. What do people care about? They care about the economy. They care about inflation. And if you aren't talking about that, you're losing them. So even though it should, look, Biden has made a mess of things. People aren't happy with him. It should be a cakewalk for Trump in 2024. But his obsession with this issue, which even for his own base is not even close to the #1 priority, makes it very, very much less likely that he ultimately would succeed in ascending to the presidency. I'm not saying it's not possible. But I think once people, again, are being fed Trump all day, every day, the way they used to, and all he's talking about this stuff, well, ask the Democrats how it went then when they were obsessing over the Mueller report and over Russiagate for years and years, which again was not the top priority of the American people. You know, their ratings fell off a cliff and they handed Trump a gigantic victory that obviously he didn't really deserve.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we kept saying this throughout the election. Trump had the most winnable election in modern history, and he almost won, and he's still able to screw it up. Look,
that's right.
Never underestimate Trump's ability also in order to F things up. For those of you who are hardcore MAGA and you claim to care about the issues, I watched him screw up DACA. I watched him screw up the government shutdown. I watched him screw up every possible thing that you people supposedly care. Iraq, Afghanistan, withdrawing the troops, every single thing he said he was going to do. Oh, that BS Phase 2 China deal. The only thing he did was cut corporate taxes.
That's the legacy.
That's it. And you know, I always try to remind people, the lowest point of Trump's presidency was the day that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed per a public approval rating. It was not Charlottesville. It was not, even COVID. It was the day that they cut corporate taxes at the most record rate. That's an important lesson for people out there to have. And, people try to build Trump up into some mythos. He's one of the most useless presidents who ever held the Oval Office, simply because he allowed all the people around him in order to run things. But this is ultimately all the man cares about. I think everybody should just be honest about that.
Yeah, and by the way, social media companies are not doing the American people any favors by keeping them from seeing that this is all he cares about all day, every day. And by the way, for our own censors, obviously the election was not stolen and everything he's saying is complete nonsense here so that we don't get pulled down.
Thank you for not taking us off YouTube. Hey guys, we're going to be totally upfront with you. This is the most perilous time that we have ever operated in.
It is so difficult just to try to sort through the news, but even more importantly, to bring you accurate information as this wave of lockdown and censorship spreads across the nation.
Yeah, look, if you can become a premium subscriber today at breakingpoints.com, you're going to help us build out a vibrant, independent media ecosystem, which is free of mainstream pressure. We can't tell you how important that is at a time like this.
Yep, that's right. Go to breakingpoints.com to subscribe. We love you guys, and we appreciate you so much.